Paul then wrote a song about Liverpool too. Penny Lane was a much happier song, describing people and places from the old days in Liverpool. The band was still using instruments that were unusual in pop records. A trumpet played on the song. There were many differences between Paul and John. Paul was very interested in studio recording. He worked carefully with George Martin. John had little time for this. He just told the producer what he wanted. In fact, the band played Strawberry Fields Forever in two very different ways. John couldn't choose his favourite. Finally, the producer joined the two. Years later, John wasn't happy about this recording of his song. Together, Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane became the Beatles' next single. It was a great record, but for the first time in years, the band didn't reach number 1. The most famous album in the world. In the opinion of some newspapers in early 1967, the Beatles didn't have any more ideas. And then came Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The title song was Paul's. He had the idea after a trip to the United States. Bands with very long names were becoming popular there. Paul wanted the Beatles to be a different band for the album. In his mind, the album was a concert by this other band. John and George didn't see the album in this way. "It doesn't go anywhere," John once said about the Sgt. Pepper idea. But there were great songs on the album. Songs like When I'm 64 and With a Little Help from My Friends were happy and light. John took almost all the words for Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite from an old sign that he found in a shop. The words and the music of Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds were like a dream. The title came from a picture by John's young son, Julian. A Day in the Life was one of the best examples of Paul and John's strong points. John wrote the main part of the song, beginning, "I read the news today, oh boy." The idea came from 2 newspaper stories. Paul added the middle part. It worked perfectly in John's song. The album was a big step in the band's music. They used the studio wonderfully, but this took a long time. The Beatles' first album was made in around 12 hours, but Sgt. Pepper took over 700 hours. Both Ringo and George said later that it was sometimes boring. "My heart was still in India," George said. Famous faces. Everything about the album was special, even the cover. It showed the band with a crowd of famous people, writers, singers, actors, thinkers. At first, there was a photo of Mahatma Gandhi, but the record company asked the band to take it off. They didn't want to make people in India angry. Today, fans disagree about which is the best Beatles album, but most of them believe that Sgt. Pepper was the most important. The world was changing fast in 1967. While the American war in Vietnam continued, young people around the world were exploring new ideas, new sounds. The summer of 1967 became known as the Summer of Love. Sgt. Pepper helped to make that summer.